ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتذكرون ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتذكرون
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode, Quranic Parables. As usual, I'd like to welcome you all to the daily reminder from a parable from the Quran, and hope you are enjoying and gaining the blessings of this last 10 days of this blessed month. And just like to ask you all to share this program with your friends and family and invite others. And as usual, I have my guest with me, Ustad Saf. Assalamu alaikum, Ustad. How are you doing?
Alaikum salam. We're well, Ustad. We're well. Hope you're good as well.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, very good, mashallah. So, brothers and sisters, as usual, we usually have a narration or two about the virtues of the Quran. I'm not sure if Ustad Saf has managed to get hold of a narration today.
Not at the moment, Ustad.
Not at the moment. So I think, if we do recall a particular narration, we'll mention it probably later on. But inshallah ta'ala, today we really have a very very special parable of the Quran, which is generally known by a lot of Muslims, the Ayatul Nur, the verse of Nur, Nurun ala Nur, light upon light. So this is a fascinating and interesting parable that we have. And this parable, I mean, we've got about 20 minutes, half an hour, but generally the scholars throughout the ages, they've written, books and booklets and treatises on this parable. So we'll try to touch upon some of the major points during this session. By no means this is the final word on this amazing parable. And many of you probably have studied this parable yourselves, or heard about it, or someone's given a lecture. So, but this is an incredible parable. So, brothers and sisters, without any further ado, let us actually go to the parable that we have in mind for tonight. And as usual, we will start with the recitation of the parable, and then a translation, and then we'll move to a in-depth analysis, given the time constraint that we have of the parable. And as I've mentioned before, if you've missed any of the previous parables, then you can go to the Quranic Parables Facebook page, where we have listed the previous shows, so you can catch up on those as well. So let's listen to the recitation first.
الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم.
صدق الله العظيم. In the translation, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The example of his light is like a niche within which a lamp, which is a lamp, the lamp is within glass, the glass as if it were a pearly white star lit from the oil of a blessed olive tree, neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil would almost glow even if untouched by fire. Light upon light, Allah guides to his light whom he wills, and Allah presents examples for the people, and Allah is knowing of all things. So this is the basic translation, and in this verse itself, we often quote the phrase وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ لِلنَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this phrase in this verse in itself, that Allah, he strikes examples for people. So this is an incredible parable, and as I've mentioned already, that a lot has been said by the ulama throughout the ages, and also by the companions and those who follow them as well. So inshallah ta'ala, let's go to the next slide where we actually look at the breakdown. So let me just, all right, wrong slide. Right, here we go. So before we actually go into this parable, because it's quite dense and quite complex as well. So I've got a couple of pictures, Ustad. You can see, okay, so I mean, I've taken, you know, the issue of one of the interpretation of the meaning of Nur is being guidance and revelation. So just represented that with the Quran. But the image below, which is being compared with, it's important our audience understand this image and the various components. So I've got an image below, and you can probably see the image is labeled. So first of all, let me just talk through that image, and it's really important to understand that image. So first of all, what is a niche or niche? I think it's probably niche. In Arabic, it's called a mishkat. So niche is basically that you have a carving in a wall where you would actually place a lamp. So in the olden days, even now probably for decorative purposes, they probably have a little carving in a wall. Sometimes people put candles in it or some other sort of ornaments. So that's called a niche. So this niche, as you can see, this like little carving in a wall. So this is a niche. And then what we have is that we have a lamp, right? And the lamp is got a burning wick inside it. It's got a candle, you can see it's burning, right? But this candle is actually protected and surrounded by a glass, right? So the niche is, just in terms of reference to the verse, is what we're known as the mishkat, right? The mishkat. So that's the niche. And then the misbah is the actual lamp itself, right? The entirety of the lamp. Then we have the glass, yeah, which is the zujaj. So the zujaj is the glass, right? That's the reference to the glass. And then it's fueled by olive oil. It's fueled by olive oil. And here it's mentioning the olive oil, or fueled by the olive oil, which is, you know, min shajaratin mubarakatin zaytunatin. So this is fueled by the olive oil. So hopefully with that explanation, when we go through the verse, it's going to be a bit clearer. Hopefully that was useful, Ustaz, just in
Yeah, it
terms
was
of...
definitely, because it's really helped us to sort of visualize the different parts, the components, in case we're reading the ayah and we're just trying to imagine,
Yes.
each aspect fits it together
Exactly.
to give us
So
a
I think
picture.
what we should do
Jazakallah.
as we go through the verse, if we need to actually just, reference the image, then we can do that. And hopefully our audience can also follow this mathal as we go through it. So Bismillah, let's start with our usual, which is the simile components. So Ustad, I'm going to get my annotator out. So you go through it and I'll annotate it. Let's do the basic simile components, and then we can go to the various interpretation people have given regarding this particular verse. So
of course,
Fadda. And by all means, you give a little introduction to this verse if you need to.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think, as you mentioned, it is a very, very it's a beautiful, beautiful parable, and it's a parable that's really captured not only the Muslim scholars over the centuries, but it's all non-Muslims as well who are interested in, what are the literary features of it. So often, it's called Ayat al-Nur, as its laqab, and the commentaries on it have been, so varied, and perhaps most famously, people are probably familiar with the commentary that you'll find in the mystical, the Sufi literature, where the metaphorical interpretation takes on quite an intense form, where even though the metaphorical meanings is coherent, the meanings are coherent, but they may not, but the meaning isn't quite obvious. So there is quite a considerable departure from the lexical sort of dimension. So it goes on to a different dimensions. So many Muslim Sufis and philosophers as well, are very into this verse, and they argue for like a batini or esoteric interpretation of it or reading of it. So Hujjat al-Islam, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, puzzled over this ayah, and he gave his interpretation of it, and it was collected in the book attributed to him called Mishkat al-Anwar. So any of you who may be familiar with that work of Hujjat al-Islam, Mishkat al-Anwar, and that is considered a small masterpiece. So obviously it begins with Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. So here some of the ulama say Allahu munawwiru samawati wal ard. So Allah is the one who illuminates the heavens and the earth. So whether he does that through objects like the sun and the moon, or whether he does it directly himself, but Allah is not in the heavens and the earth according to that interpretation. So okay, so then the next bit says, and now I think our viewers will be familiar, is mathalu nurihi. So the example of his light, the nurihi, generally this is considered to be the damir here, the pronoun hu, referring back to Allah in just the previous verse here, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. So mathalu nurillah, that's how it be read. Ka, and then you got your tashbih. So the liken, the mushabbah, is Allah's light. So nurihi, so the nur of Allah is like what? So the mushabbah bihi, what it's compared to is everything after kamishkatin fiha misbah. You can see. So it's got all these different components. So the mushabbah bihi, what Allah's light is compared to that composite construct of kamishkatin fiha misbahun, al-misbahu fi zujaja, الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسس نور على نور. So up to that bit, لم تمسسه نور, that will be the mushabbah bihi, and I think Ustad has highlighted it in yellow if you can see it on the screen. So can you see how the mushabbah bihi is so composite? It's murakkab. It's composed of so many different parts. Each part is significant, and we'll try and go over some of it.
So I think that the composition of that, hopefully that image on the right.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. That helpful image that you got. I was just about to say to the reader, refer the parts to the label on that picture. So, kamishkat. So you got the niche. So the carved out niche there in the picture, and in that niche is what? Misbahun. So there's that lamp. There's the picture of the lamp there. And what is that misbah? Misbah fi zujajatin. Lamp is in a glass encasing. الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري. And if you look at the picture there, that the glass is like a pearly white reflection, maybe from the lit the lamp that's lit inside by the what? The blessed oil that is neither from here east nor the west. So that is a very, very helpful image there, so we can match the text to the image. The question then is, well, what's all this about? So that's the surface meaning. What's it all about? Because Allah says to us, يهدي الله لنوره, which is very important here. من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. So this has got something to do with Allah's knowledge. It's got something to do with Allah's guiding. So His light has got something to do with Him guiding. There's something to do with amthal, and for us to think about, and something to do with Allah's knowledge. So all of that is relevant to this ayah. So I guess that's the mushabbah bihi, and the ka, the green, mathal ka is the simile element. And the simile feature, it could be lots of things. Fuyud, like effluence, sort of something that shines bright, something that pours forth. So it could be lots of simile features that underlie this particular tashbih. So I guess we can try and go through.
Yeah, let's go through some of the different understanding. I think we've got a matrix of them, so let's go through that, inshallah. So I think the one that we were talking just before we started, this is what al-Karhi.
Yeah, a lot of the Mufassirun do give al-Karhi's interpretation, which is like a very simple one, but people like it because of its simplicity. Now, that goes something like this. So Al-Karhi says that Nuruhu, Allah's Nur, is knowledge of Allah. Yeah, so ma'rifatullah, so ma'rifatuhu, the knowledge of Allah. And then so if you look at the picture that Ustaz has put there, al-misbah, the lamp, that's supposed to be the qalb al-mu'min, the heart of the believer, the believer's heart. Yeah. Now the zujaja, the glass encasing, if you see, if our viewers refer it back to your picture there, that's supposed to be the chest. And then the whole niche, or the whole sort of setting, is supposed to be the body of the believer. So knowledge of Allah that goes into that is in the heart, and the heart is in the chest, and the chest is obviously part of the human body. So on this interpretation, the knowledge of Allah is supposed to effuse the believer and transform them into a walking, talking, free creature that submits to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can see?
Yeah. So
the ma'rifah of Allah is supposed to transform them into becoming an abd. So that's sort of a simple one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this one, you can very easily
relate to
it. Because, so when you say mathalu nurihi, is mathalu, it's the ma'rifah, it's the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. And so you can understand, and that is now given the example of this knowledge. What is it like? And
Yes.
that like is that mishkatin fi misbah. That mishkah is fiha misbahun. The misbah, the lamp, is the heart. And if you think about the heart is actually encompassed by the chest, isn't it? It's protected by the chest, which kind of mirrors with the analogy of the zujaj, of the actual glass, right? So it's there. And then, you know, this entire, the heart, the chest is actually in a body, and that body is the actual mishkat, is the actual that, you know, or that curvature that's carved out in a wall.
Right.
So
in effect, the radiance
almost like
that comes from the believer is because of that knowledge of Allah. Can you see?
Yeah.
So in other words, the manifestation of a believer's actions, words, you know, everything that they do has to be diffused with that knowledge of Allah. Otherwise, what else are you going to? What else are you moving, talking? What else? How else are you moving? What else are you basing your whole orientation on? You see, if not Allah. So it's a simple one.
It's very beautiful in terms of the imagery. So just going back to this issue of now the zujaj, right? The zujaj has been described as ka'annaha kawkabun durriyun. There is also a metaphor that's taking place as well. So it's like a really pearly white star, right?
Brilliant white,
brilliant white star. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing that the chest, if you like, of the believer is you know, like a brilliant white star itself. And then you have the second description, يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية. Now it's almost, and this is almost you know, the verse mentioned يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار, that it is lit from a blessed, you know, olive tree, which is either easterly or westerly. It's neither from the eastern or the western, which is interesting because because olive trees, the purity of the oil depends on amount of sunlight they get. So if it's in the eastern side, then you only get sunlight at a particular time, and if it's in the western side, you will get sunlight at a particular time. But this tree is so special. It's not located east or in the west, but it is getting sunlight, and therefore its purity of its oil is going to be, you know, first class, unspoiled.
Now you mentioned that. So let me give you an interpretation that could be just as competitive as that one. All right, so here goes. Here's one. All right, so the nur here. So is, because this is going to be, because the first one back al-Karhi is about the believer, right?
Yes.
About the mu'min. This one is about the Prophet. So it says the nur here is the messenger of Allah, because we've got other verses that says قَدْ جَاءَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ وَكِتَابٌ مُبِينٌ and so on. The misbah is the light in his chest. The misbah is the light in his chest. The mishkat is the cavity, the jawf of the messenger of Allah, that cavity in his chest that was purified. The zujaja is his heart. The shajara mubaraka is Ibrahim alayhi salam.
Wow.
And the reason being is because that from Ibrahim alayhi salam, all the anbiya came, min salbihi, like from his lineage. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is the blessed tree.
Right.
And then the Prophet is from the line of Ismail alayhi salam, obviously from there. And then it says, La sharqiyya wa la gharbiyya, neither east nor west, neither Jew nor Christian.
Okay. Right.
So that's another possible, the Mufassirun
I mean,
have given.
That's interesting, because the issue of this zaytun tree, which provides the oil, right, is really talking about it's talking about, you know, guidance and knowledge and ilm,
Mm.
right? It is the fuel, if you like, for the hearts of the believers. But what came to my mind is that it's not worldly, in the sense that, you know, a tree has to grow either in the east or in the west, right? That it is unique, meaning that this knowledge, this ilm, this ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or this revelation, or this guidance, whatever you want to call it, which illuminates, it's not worldly, it's heavenly. You know, so in terms of, you know, people used to think in terms of, you know, the ideological terms, is it Western or is it Eastern, right? Yeah, you have these, you know, Western ideology, Eastern ideology, you know, communism versus capitalism, right?
Yeah.
You have this different kind of spectrum that exists in terms of ideology and beliefs and religions and etc. They have a spectrum. I mean, today, I mean, in political parlance today, you know, either you're on the right or you're on the left or you're in the center, you know, or you're in the center, right?
Yeah.
So you have this discussion people have, where are you in the spectrum of beliefs? Where are you in the spectrum of politics and ideology? All right, are you Eastern or are you Western? And this is what really struck out, is that Islam is neither Eastern nor Western. It doesn't belong to any isms, is not on any, it shouldn't be put onto any man-made beliefs or ideologies or spectrum whatsoever. It has its own independent origin and source, and is not derived from any other sources whatsoever. And that's a very unique point I was just thinking about, as we are kind of thinking about the uniqueness of, you know, if you say the mathalu nurihi, the example of his nur is unlike any other nur.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that's an interesting observation, I think, from la sharqiyati wa la gharbiyya. Right. Okay. Any other? And the other point that's interesting here is that, you know, the purity of this oil is such that it says yakadu zaytuha yudi'u walau lam tamsashu narun. It's almost, well, you know, come alight by itself, right? Come alight by itself and illuminate, yeah, even if the fire didn't touch it, right?
Definitely.
So it's giving you that, okay, if you put this fuel, this olive oil fuel, such a pure fuel inside the actual lamp, but what you would need is usually need a match or something to light it up, right? But it's so pure that it would just come, it can just self-combust and come to light by itself. So it's indicating on the purity of this oil, and given the why is it so pure, it's getting sunlight, you know, constantly throughout the day, neither from the east or the west, so therefore it's got the most pure oil itself. So that's another interesting point about this issue of the purity. I just want to mention, I was just telling you what Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ashur, that he said about this point, which I thought is quite interesting, about the tree. What did he say? Right, yeah. I'm trying to find the quote. Well, I find the quote. What were some of the other points that some of the Mufassirin mentioned?
Oh, just some balagha points I was just going to mention.
Yeah, let's go through those, inshallah.
Here's an interesting one. And when Allah, you know, it says, so whenever Allah talks about, like, you know, Allah, there's a lot of parallelism in this, meaning like He's put a structure up. And one of the ways you can look at the structure is when Allah repeats the word. So مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في الزجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب. Can you see? You get that, like that's not just to give it a flow, but that's to knit the whole structure together. So it's a form of what we call parallelism, and you get that, for example, like in Surah Al-Tariq. خلق فلينظر الإنسان مما خلق من ماء دافق. Can you see? So خلق is mentioned to end one part of a clause, and خلق begins the other, the next word, immediately following word. You see? So it's two words, same word side by side.
That's interesting. The other point is that rather than using a pronoun, the actual noun is used to emphasize the, I guess, the main component.
Yeah, definitely.
The arkan of the actual tashbih itself, because you could have used pronouns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
the other point here is the use of what we call tankir, the nakira form.
Okay.
Without the alif lam. A lot of these words here are mentioned in the indefinite form. So, min shajaratin mubarakatin, zaytuna, sharqiyya, gharbiyya.
Yeah.
Can you see zujaja, misbahun? Now, why does Allah use that? One of the reasons could be, Allah knows best, is one, obviously we're not specifying anything, but sometimes you mention the nakira, the indefinite. Sometimes you don't mention the definite, you keep it vague in order to give it ta'zim. You see, sometimes you make something indefinite, you put it in the indefinite form in order to make it not mysterious, but enigmatic. So we put it in the nakara for that. Because once you put alif lam, like our viewers would know, you make something mu'arraf. You make it known because you've defined it, isn't it?
So it's the reason like the لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Rasulun, a great messenger, right?
That's right. That's right. It's not, it's right. It's not any number of messengers, but the tankir is for magnification.
Yeah.
Ta'zim. Tankili, ta'zim. So here, this is what's going on. If our viewers have spotted it, it's all in the indefinite form, isn't it? So that was very interesting. You got tibaq, you got the opposites, haven't you? You've got sharqiyya, gharbiyya, east and west. So yeah, Ustaz is just highlighting it there in green. You got jinas, لو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور.
Okay, so
the sounds of
yeah. I mean, Nur ala Nur, we have to talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So you got jinas, yes.
So for those jinas where the letters from sound very similar, again, this is to give it the flow. There's a couple more. It's just slipped my head now. Now the question is, see where it says mathalu nurihi at the top.
Yeah.
Is that the same nur as yahdi Allahu li nurihi? You see? So if our viewers can see, if they get a line maybe from the nurihi to the top to the bottom.
So this,
so Ustaz has got there in green, he's highlighted nurihi at the top.
Yeah.
You see? So again, that was interesting. That's nothing to do with the balagha point there, but it just crossed my mind and I forgot to mention it at the beginning. What was it? So there was another thing I wanted to say now. It just slipped my mind again.
What do you think? I found the quote from Ibn Ashur rahimahullah.
Okay.
He said something interesting about min shajaratin. He said min shajaratin says yumi'u ila hajati ila al-ijtihadi ulama ad-din استخراج إرشاده على مرور الأزمنة لأن استخراج الزيت من ثمر الشجرة يتوقف على اعتصار الثمرة وهو الاستنباط. Now, just basic translation of that. He said regarding, he's saying min shajaratin, from a tree, because it alludes to the need of ijtihad, ijtihad, extraction of rules,
Definitely,
by the scholars of the deen in extracting its guidance ala mururil azmina, throughout the ages. لأن استخراج الزيت من ثمر الشجرة, because extraction of the oil from the fruits of the tree dependent upon على اعتصار الثمرة, squeezing the fruit. And this is istinbat. So he's made an analogy to the tree, that you take the olives and you squeeze it in order to get the oil, and it is the benefits actually in the oil itself, which you use it to light up the lamp. And he says this indicates to the need for ulama throughout the ages to effectively, in the same way you actually extract the oil from the fruits, we have to extract the ahkams, the solutions, the guidance from the text of Islam. And therefore this is called istinbat. So this is an interesting point that he's making, that the need and necessity for scholars and ulama and mujtahideen to be present throughout the ages, so that the Muslims, whenever they're facing a new problem, we can extract the solution like we extract oil from the olives from an olive tree, in order to light up this lamp. So it's the solutions of Islam is now being compared with the fuel that lights up the lamp.
Yeah, because without ijtihad, that guidance can't be extended in every time and place. So that guidance needs to be able to be extendable to every time and age.
Yeah.
And you can't do that without ijtihad. So he's looking at it definitely from the context of hidayah, or that part of the tafsir is in the discussion of hidayah as well.
Yeah,
it's very interesting, that one. Yeah, I think he's the one who alone, I think, as far as I know,
he made that point. Yeah,
made that interpretation. Yeah.
And then he's got another point about the mishkat, right? So he says, the mishkat. Sorry, not the mishkat. Yeah, he says something, and he says hifdhul misbah min al-intifa'i ma'a ma yuhitu bil Qur'ani min hifdhihi min Allah bi qawlihi ta'ala inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. So he's actually taken the meaning, the issue of the glass protecting the actual lamp and its burning wick. So he's saying, this is alluding to the fact that the Quran is protected. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. Indeed, we revealed this dhikr, and we are and we will protect it. We will preserve it. So it's got some interesting points, brothers and sisters. I know we're probably going on a little bit, but this, like I said, this verse, it really opens up a lot of discussion, and hopefully you probably can see that me and Ustaz Saf, we're kind of bringing different types of discussion on it, and hopefully that increases your appetite to go and study this verse and study what the different scholars have said, and really try to understand it. Okay, Ustaz Saf, let's move on to the meaning of Nurun ala Nur, because that is the famous catchphrase, right? So Nurun ala Nur. So now it suggests a light upon light, but I think some of the scholars have mentioned that this does not mean one light upon light. There's many lights.
Well, I mean, some people interpret Nurun ala Nur as being like Iman and Ilm, for example. So they looked at it as different facets of either a believer. You see, so things like, because in the Quran, actions like salah are referred to like nur. You see, nur can be a reference to actions and belief and things like that. So some of the nurun ala nur could be like not just the idea of piles upon piles of light, but so many different dimensions of light. And each one of these dimensions stands for something. Actions, deeds, knowledge, and whatever it might be, piety. So that's one interpretation, nurun ala nur. Again, it's in the indefinite form. So it means multiple. It means any number of amount. The other interpretation of nurun ala nur. What did I have here?
I mean, the other one was, I think Sheikh Mawardi in his
man,
got quite a few. He says nurul iman ala nurul amal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so in terms of the light of belief upon the light of action. So that was one.
So as I was saying, that this is what, these are the aspects that they refer to, things that are to do with the believer mainly. What was I going to say to you? No, I wrote here. Documents are sliding. So some people say Nurun ala Nur is al Quran, is the Nur, and then all of its dalail and everything else related to the Quran, all of its aspects are just light upon light. You see? So the Quran, Nurun, that's Nurun from Allah, for all of creation, has all these different facets that itself are light as well. So every dimension of the Quran being light. That's the other one I've got here. Quite a few others.
I think one was what you just mentioned, that the nur here, the first nur is basically the Quran that guides you.
Yeah.
And the second is there's a nur that exists naturally in the world in terms of signs and ayats, which people can through that appreciate the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also there's an aspect which really fascinates me regarding the issue of there is natural tendency that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us with, the fitrah, to seek guidance. And this exists within us as human beings in our natural state. And those who are seeking this guidance, looking for that guidance, and they reflect on that. And so that's a nur itself. There's an internal, intrinsic nur that people have with good, sound nature, who are looking for the truth. It reminds me a bit like Salman al-Farsi's story, that, if you think about his story is that he was searching for the truth. And, he went from city to city, place to place, and then he ended up in Medina. And so he had his natural nur in terms of seeking the truth. And when the Prophet ﷺ came with the wahi and the revelation, so the nur of revelation and his internal nur, they came into contact, and therefore it was light upon light.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of people are taking that nur to be with the Quran because it says Yahdi Allahu li nurihi man yasha.
Yeah.
So they take, for example, one of the interpretations from I think it's check with, I think it might be Hassan ibn Zayd. They say that this whole method is to do with the Quran. So the misbah is the Quran, and what Allah guides with, His nur, is the Quran. The zujaja, the glass encasing, is the heart of the believer. The mishkat is his mouth, his tongue. Shajara Mubaraka is the Shajaratul Wahi.
I mean, this makes sense. It makes sense because the previous verse.
That's right. And the zayt by which you get the brilliant glow itself, they say, is the Hujjatul Quran. You see, is the dalail and the hujjah that the Quran came and brought, to show, to uncover the realities of things, whether man's fitrah or the reality of things in creation. So it's understandable why why ulama would want to link it naturally to Quran. The issue,
it
anyway,
absolutely
is
makes sense. And I think,
as a reflection point. I know we might be jumping ahead, but again, it's about hidayah. It comes from Allah. It doesn't come from man. If we're taking hidayah, it comes from man. And subhanallah, it's interesting. But Allah uses the attribute "Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim." Obviously, Allah knows the depth of what His murad is in this verse, isn't it? That's the first thing. Allah knows the true meaning of it. But He's the one who has all knowledge of everything. So if He's the one who has knowledge of everything, then He's going to have all the knowledge that you need to be guided by. You see? Yep. So we never think that whenever Allah mentions one of His epithets, His names within a verse, it has no link to what He's just mentioned. It has all the link to it. So definitely a reflection point being that even if we're going to skip over all the interpretations that we've just gone through and more that can be said, the hidayah is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and definitely hidayah in this context is the Quran, and that is the guidance, the nur that shines, that illuminates everything, whether the aql, the mind, because of its dalail and hujjah, whether the heart, because of how penetrative it is, whatever dimension it is, at least take home the point that hidayah is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It can never come from the mind of man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, so in terms of some reflection points, I think, like I said to earlier on, that this verse, we were not going to be able to do justice to it in 20 minutes, half an hour. But I think some clear points for reflection. So, I mean, just some summary points, Ustadh, before we actually bring the discussion to an end.
Well, definitely one thing, this beautiful verse, which we haven't even done it justice, we've just sort of just been hopping around on, is whatever interpretation we take, it's definitely one of it's to do with taghayyur, to do with change and transformation. Whatever, so the believer, if we take it as a believer, the reference to the believer, for example, the believer is transformed by whatever revelation, iman. You see, whatever tafsir you take, some form of change has taken place. The Prophet was purified, his blessed chest was opened up, purified, and then of course, the Prophet with the message went and transformed not just Arabia but the entire world. So there's definitely a reflection for us to think about in terms of change and transformation. Change is going to come with the hidayah of Islam. It's not going to come with anything else. It's not going to come from a deliberation of a council of people or members or people within a parliament or, some kind of clerical council, some kind of monarchy, some kind of other human fallible created source. Change is going to come from when man turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And I think that the point here about يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء. That Allah, He guides to His light whom He wills. And I think the meaning, we need to be very careful here, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is guiding us through the Quran. He's sending us prophets and messengers and wahi. And we as human beings, when we are presented with that, we have a choice to make, whether we follow this guidance or we don't follow this guidance. And the people who will naturally follow this guidance are those people who have a sound fitrah, who have a sound, innate human nature, seeking the truth, seeking guidance, and they don't have any of the attributes or dispositions which are obstacles to guidance. So this is a really important point, because we don't want to kind of think that that guidance and misguidance is from one perspective. Yes, it is from Allah, and what we mean by it is from Allah means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sends prophets and messengers. to guide people. That's one meaning. The other meaning, of course, tawfiq, in terms of success, is also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we are, as human beings, we have free will. We have a free choice whether to follow the guidance or not to follow the guidance. And in this verse, Allah is saying that if you follow this guidance, yeah, then you'll be illuminated by Islam. You'll be, let's put the word enlightened, if I want to use that word. You will have enlightenment by Islam itself. Again, it's important to think about these terms in the sense of change and enlightenment. So that's a really important point. And I think the other point is, Allah mentioned وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ لِلنَّاسِ. Allah strikes these parables for people, and that is an invitation for us to really think and reflect on this particular parable in a lot of depth, and with a lot of contemplation. But you're right. The last phrase, "Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim," Allah is knowing of all things. That's a very powerful way to end this parable, because it shows Allah's full knowledge of everything in the heavens and the earth, and what's within it. Any other concluding remarks, Ustaz, before we bring it to an end?
Well, I think there's a couple that come to my mind.
So, brothers and sisters, today's Amthal, I know it's probably been not as smooth and flowing as the previous one because of the different interpretation the ulama have given, but nevertheless, I think there's some key points that we can take from it. One is, the importance of revelation and guidance and its impact that it should have on the heart and the mind of the believers in terms of their thinking, their beliefs, their attitudes, and how they should live their life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he guides to those who want to be guided. And I'm going to think deeply about it. So there's definitely some key points that we can take away from this. I don't have anything else to add. I know we've gone over our allotted time, but I hope brothers and sisters have found this parable inspiring, and hopefully it's a motivation for us to go and study this parable even in more detail than what we've actually mentioned today, because there is much material from different scholars throughout the ages on this parable. Ustad, any final words before?
No, it's been amazing going through it, even though we just didn't really get to go through it, as you mentioned, in a fully structured way. But it's a beautiful verse, and and remind our viewers to have a look for yourself and read and see if you can bring some interesting reflections of your own and share it with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Barakallah Feek, brothers and sisters, thank you for joining us. And again, we hope to be with you tomorrow night, inshallah ta'ala, with another parable from the glorious Quran. So from me, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
From me, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتذكرون